It is awesome to be here. Let's do it, Team Colorado. Let's be the leaders that we need. The pandemic has been a difficult experience. I want to start by reflecting on it and what we learned. I want to talk about leadership and then empathy. What I want to start with is a little bit of a light note, a curveball note, and a geek science fiction note in honor of our CEO. I had the chance during the pandemic to argue before the Supreme Court, but not at the Supreme Court. This is our conference room. This is my family in the background, arguing a principle that I deeply believe in, that the voters have a right to be heard, and that every vote must be counted. That principle was challenged in a case involving whether an elector could be faithless, go rogue in other words, and not follow the will of the people. In that argument, Justice Ginsburg participated at the Supreme Court for the last time. And she asked me a question that every advocate would like to be asked. What bad things would happen if you lost this case? And I got a bunch of other questions, including one about Frodo Baggins. Justice Thomas asked the question of my opposing counsel, under your theory, could an elector vote for Frodo Baggins for president? Highlighting a flaw of the theory and Justice Thomas's interest in Lord of the Rings. And for that, he has my appreciation. I was able to weave that into my rebuttal. I also was able to weave in some civic education. We called it Colorado Goes Supreme, using this case as a chance to teach the people of Colorado. And I'm going to talk more about civic education, something we need more of. Over the last now 18 months, coming up on 2 years, we've worked to engage the people of Colorado across Colorado. It's been harder. Our commitment remains undaunted. My view of the role of Attorney General is to be the people's lawyer. I believe in a government which is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. If you want to represent the people of Colorado, you've got to show up. You've got to listen. You've got to learn. We have a way to think about the role of governance. Here's our vision. Together we serve Colorado and its people, advancing the rule of law, protecting our democracy, promoting justice for all. And we do it with 4 central values. It's not about us, 550 people in the AG's office. It's about the people of Colorado who we serve. It's about being principled, committed to the rule of law, and making sure that we build trust in how our legal institutions function. It's about innovation, to Sarah's point about not coloring only inside the lines. I don't want people telling me how it's always been done. I want to know what's the best way we can do this. And it's about being better together. Our democracy is a team sport. We need people together. I'll talk about those values in action. But first, back to Justice Ginsburg and Justice Scalia, who I got to see working in a respectful relationship, in engaged dialogue. When I was working for Justice Ginsburg, there was a decision involving the Virginia Military Institute. Could it exclude women? Her opinion, for every member of the court except Justice Scalia, said it could not. Justice Scalia's dissent, which was given to her early so she'd have a chance to reflect on those arguments, as she put it, ruined her weekend, but made for a much better opinion. We should not be afraid of disagreement, and we should do it in a way that's respectful and that helps us find better policy. One thing I learned for Roy Romer, I'll come back to in a second, is all truth is partial. None of us can see all the truth, which is why showing up and listening and learning is so important. Unfortunately, much of what people see as politics today is not the relationship that I saw between Justices Ginsburg and Scalia. It's people arguing or hating or yelling on social media in a more and more polarized, even demonized environment that threatens the very essence of living in a democratic republic. That's why, as the chair of the Attorney General's Alliance this year, my signature initiative is the Ginsburg-Scalia initiative. We will be taking that around the state to help encourage public engagement that is true to the spirit of 1776. In our case, that would be 1876 as well, because we are the centennial state. Colorado is special as a centennial state. That is what was written about by Roger Cohen in this article, can Colorado save America? Can we collaborate with one another across divides to solve problems? It is a question of basic governance. My answer? Yes, let's do it, Colorado. Roy Romer taught me another lesson, which is how important it is to show up as your best authentic self, which is what Sarah was saying at the outset, and to listen. When the Denver International Airport was lying in the balance, and Adams County voters were not sure, would they go for it? He showed up every morning for breakfast and had oatmeal. And on Sundays invited hairdressers and barbers to come and talk with him at the governor's mansion. What are you hearing? That's democracy. That's listening to people, learning from people, and being engaged. Wallace Stegner, a great writer, commentator on the West, captures it well. We can't be pessimistic. This is the native land of hope. As a Westerner, as an American, and as the son of a Holocaust survivor whose my grandmother told me when she was asked how she survived during such a horrific period, she said, it's easier to believe. We have to believe. We have to have hope about our future. And in our office, we're not sticking within colonial lines, which is why when the Rocky Mountain Health Plans, which was sold to United Health, left in a clause that said, if we win this litigation, then United Healthcare gets to consider what to do with the money. I heard from the foundation that was created once the sale happened, about $30 million. And the foundation said, our legal argument that they have to consider what to do with the money isn't the best legal argument, but you have a moral argument, which I was able to make. And we have a $5 million public-private partnership to show for it, investing in youth mental health, on top of $25 million more going into that foundation. As I learned, and as my daughter has learned, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. We are facing monumental challenges in our water. No one knows that better than State Senator Cleve Simpson, who is a gift to Colorado in his knowledge of water and his commitment to serving all of Colorado. We have an opportunity now to invest in water infrastructure and to prepare for challenging times. You're going to hear more and more about resilience and about adaptability because our water systems are much more fragile, much more unpredictable than they were 20 or 30 years ago. And we have to learn from lessons of the past of how to do this right. And we can do that together. When I came down to Alamosa and Aaron Minks introduced me to Robert Jackson in July of 2017, I had known about the opioid epidemic in a more abstract way. My wife, who's in healthcare, had told me about the work she was doing to cut back on these prescription drugs being pushed out. But learning from the Valley about how it had decimated lives, communities, and was responsible for 90% of those in jail in Alamosa County got my attention. And so an issue that wasn't on the tip of my tongue when I started is now my top priority. Heidi Williams is here with me today as we work to serve all of Colorado and develop a solution with $400 million coming back to Colorado because we sued companies like McKinsey, like Purdue Pharma, like Johnson & Johnson, who were irresponsible, who were wrongful, and who took advantage of people. With that money, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity. And there are more funds to help behavioral health. And we need to support people who right now are in jail. And when they leave jail, 130 times more likely than the average person to overdose. We lost more people to drug overdose, mostly opioids, in 2020 than ever before. And more people than we lost in the Vietnam War and Iraq War combined. This is a crisis that calls for our engagement, and this opportunity on a bottom-up regional solution will not come around again anytime soon. So we need to maximize the impact, and the community here, as you can see, includes Southwest Colorado, Huerfano County, Pueblo, working together in a collaborative way. We are here to support them. And the same with the Valley and other parts of our state. Another coloring outside the line story. When I came down here to Trinidad and Southeast Colorado, I heard from people, including from Sarah, we've got a problem. There are all these houses that are blighted. No one's living in them. A lot of them have asbestos. It's really expensive to remove it, to test for it, and it's becoming an anchor pulling down our communities. And we have a problem with not enough housing. What can you do about it, Phil? I said, I don't know. But if I'm elected Attorney General, I'll find out. So I'm elected, and I found out there was this litigation that brought back $60 million to Colorado from these banks who did bad things in a mortgage foreclosure mess that deserved them being held to account. And the money came back to Colorado, and the AG is the steward, and the money went to a standard program to support housing. I asked about that standard program. How much money has gone to work south of Pueblo? The answer, $0. Why? Because most of government is not dictated by whether Democrats are in charge or Republicans in charge. It's dictated about whether you're operating based on inertia or innovation. And the inertial thing to do is go with the established program that didn't work for Southeast Colorado, and that didn't work for me. So I said, we've got to do better. Vanessa Devereaux grew up in San Luis. She went to Colorado Law School. She's a rock star. We made her the point person on developing what we now call COPERR, the Colorado Partnership for Education and Rural Revitalization. That program is being proved out here in Trinidad. I got to see housing today. It's working in Lamar, and we're going to keep building on it so that we can do right by this community. That's a success story. That's how people come together to solve problems. We heard about the legislative session and frustrations that Sarah noted. Here's what we need to do. Collaborate on the front end. If people aren't talking to one another, aren't talking to your state senator, aren't talking to your attorney general, stuff's going to slip by that we're not going to know is even happening. And then if we enact a program, but we're not engaged as it's being implemented, one of the laws that we don't learn about too much in law school, the law of unintended consequences, can take hold. And we need to make sure that our rural communities are supported. One reason we're working so hard in the Peace Officer Standards and Training Program is we know recruiting law enforcement in rural communities is really hard. That's why we developed a scholarship program to support cadets in rural communities. We also know that unfunded mandates are unfair, which is why I fought against them and fought for funding in areas like body cams or a requirement to give people a hearing within 48 hours. I want to talk a little bit about empathy. And this is a great quote. Every teacher knows it. Nobody knows. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And caring here, by the way, is about not, I'm sorry for you, but I feel your pain. I feel the pain of these communities where families are losing loved ones to the opioid epidemic, where people are living communities across from someone using drugs in a blighted house that's pulling down the community. We have to create space. And for those who've ever heard of or listened to Brene Brown, you know what I'm talking about. If we feel connected, that's a whole different ballgame than feeling isolated. And part of the challenge of this pandemic was how much disconnection people felt from one another. What we need to know at our best as Coloradans, as Americans, is we come through that feeling of isolation, even humiliation, with creative action, with solutions. That's who we are. And as we do so, we can't allow ourselves to be divided by contempt, judgment, divisiveness. Instead, we have to lead with kindness, finding it in our hearts to pray for and support others even when their actions don't suggest that response. And that's where Fred Rogers comes in. This is the politics that I want for Colorado, and I'll read this quote. Fred was a man with vision. His vision was of the public square, a place full of strangers, transformed by love and kindness into something like a neighborhood. That vision depended on civility, on strangers feeling welcome in the public square, and so civility could not be debatable. It couldn't be the subject of politics, but rather had to be the very basis of politics along with everything else worthwhile. That's what I feel in Colorado. That's who we are. That's what we need to be. That's what Action 22 is. That's why it's so important. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you very much.